Hello, everyone. This is Monsef Afkher, and thank you so much for joining us in this new call of Your Divine Uniqueness. So very happy again to connect with you here on the live call, and also with those of you who will be either listening or watching the replay. So thank you for your presence, and also very excited that Rhonda Britten is with us on the show. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this call for a long time, and I'm really glad that that we are having the call today and that we could plan it. So really excited. And today's call will be about the divine aspects of fearless living. Rhonda will be sharing about that, and also later toward the end part, the last part of the call, we'll have a Q&A where you can ask your questions. And for that, if you are on Zoom app, you can either raise your hand or type your questions on the chat box. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can type your questions on the chat box there. And yes, so in the beginning, I would love to share with you a little bit about Rhonda. So Rhonda Britten, Emmy Award winner, repeat opera guest, master coach, has changed lives in over 600 episodes of reality television, is the author of 4 bestsellers, including her seminal work, Fearless Living, and is the founder of the Fearless Living Institute, home of the Ivy League of life coaching training. Named America's favorite life coach, she brings the neuroscience of fear down to earth, giving you a path out of not being good enough using the wheels technology she developed that saved her own life. And yeah, so that's Rhonda. Welcome to the show. We're excited to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. So I shared a little bit about you through your bio, but I would love if you can tell us more about the kind of work and support that you offer to your clients.
Thank you so much. I think the most important thing is that, is fear. Like, right. So let me just get everybody to take a little quiz right now. Let's just take a little quiz and see if you have any, see if this call has any relevance to you, right? Because most people I know never believe they have fear, or if they do, they think it's not a big deal. Or, most of my life, I never said I'm scared or I'm afraid. Never. I never said I'm scared. I never said I'm afraid. That's no way. So I was trained not to do that because I was trained not to feel. And I don't know if other people can relate to that, but I think it's very common that our people that's supposed to love us don't actually teach us what our feelings are, actually to identify our feelings, which, by the way, our feelings are actually the number one indicator. The more feelings you have, the number one indicator of your emotional intelligence. So if you have access to 5 feeling names, labeling 5 feelings, your emotional intelligence is kind of low. So you want as many feeling words as possible. So so I felt, but I only had 2 feelings. And everything that I thought that I now know is fear-based, I actually thought was a character flaw. I actually thought it was me. It was my fault. I was screwed up, right? And I never, ever equated it with fear. So I think one of the things that I attempt to support people with is to understand that it's not them, like literally not them. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just fear. So let's just take a quick quiz and then we can keep moving forward. So go ahead and shut your eyes if you're able. If you're driving and you're listening, please don't shut your eyes. But if you're able, shut your eyes and nod your head. And if you're willing, nod your head right now just to see if you can do it, because we want you to really nod. And I'm going to read a bunch of words and nod your head if you do them, if you feel them, if you experience them. Okay. So do you ever deny yourself? Do you ever isolate? Do you ever pretend things are okay when they're not? Do you ever compare yourself? Do you ever settle? Do you ever whine? How about judging? Do you ever get defensive? What about manipulating? Do you ever complain, procrastinate, worry, struggle? Do you ever try to control things, get blameful, deflect? Do you ever feel bitter or powerless? Are you nodding your head? Do you feel dissatisfied, resentful, entitled, guilty? Do you ever get disappointed? Do you ever act like a perfectionist? Do you get overwhelmed and ignored? Do you feel annoyed like now? Do you ever get into self-pity? So go ahead and just you can stop nodding your head, but just tell yourself silently yourself. And if you have a piece of paper in front of you, just go ahead and say, was it 90%, 80%, 70%, 95%, 100%? And the most people that I work with or that move through fearless living admit that some of those things are fear, right? So if you procrastinate, there's a fear, right? You procrastinate, there's a fear underneath. If you're perfectionist, there's a fear underneath. Get overwhelmed, there's a fear underneath. So if you do any of these things or feel any of those things, that means you have fear. And when I discovered this, because I had done everything, you name it, shaman work, rebirthing, therapy, trauma, you name it, I did it. But it wasn't until I was able to see fear for what it is, instead of blaming myself for character defects or flaws or quirks or problems, or I'm bad, or again, whatever it is, I wasn't actually able to transcend fear. I wasn't able to use fear for good, right? I wasn't able to use the power of fear to change my life. So the thing that really changed my life was the recognition that I have fear, and my father had fear, and my mother had fear, and I could share that in just a minute. But until I was able to say it's fear, and it's not because I'm wrong, bad, stupid, etc., I wasn't actually able to do the things that were calling me. I wasn't able to actually do my divine work. I wasn't actually able to move forward in the way that I wanted. So, I was a spiritual practitioner. I was in ministerial school. And it wasn't until I admitted, identified, and moved through my fear and be able to work with it that I was actually able to do my soul's calling, that I was able to do my purpose. So that is what I support people in, not only understanding and doing, but also to transcend. And then, of course, I train coaches to help them help others, right? To help them transcend, help other people transcend. So that's kind of the heart of what I do and believe. And, most of us, when we're in a transition place, in a transformation place, fear is nipping at our heels. So let's name it, let's move through it, let's use it for our good, and let's become masterful.
Yeah, wonderful. I love what you said now, and totally agree with it. Because being honest with ourselves about how we feel and what we experience can really create a big shift and a big momentum toward bringing more of our lives, our gifts to the world. And also because we learned that's if something triggers us, we try to defend ourselves. We, instead of looking into it and try to understand it without judgment. So my question is, because sometimes it can be challenging, so how can we be in that place of not judgment?
Well, I think one of the first things you said, the few things you said was, it's hard to not judge ourselves. And one of the things that we want to realize about fear, the way our brains work, actually, the way our brain works is, and this is actually how it works, right? It has it's made for fear because it's made to keep us safe. It's made to keep us alive. And so whenever we have a problem, whenever we want to shift something about our life, whether it's big or small or in between, our brain will automatically look in the past for a solution to our problem. Now, the problem with that is the past may not be where you want to go, or may not be anything about what you want to create for your future. But the brain will automatically do that, because what the brain does, it goes, oh, Rhonda's still alive. I must have done such a good job before. So let me go look in my toolbox of things I've done in the past to see what worked. But you've grown, you've changed, you have different values now, you have a different way of being, but you're still looking at your old toolkit. And again, it's not because you're purposely doing that, it's the brain is wired to do that. So unless we actually, as you said, you kind of own the fact that we have fear, kind of name it. And I do want to say that, remember, we're wired not to do that, right? We're wired not to do that. So we have to really decide. We really have to make a decision. Do we want to live the life our soul intended? Or do we want to be the servant of fear? Bottom line. I know it doesn't feel that way, but that's actually at the bottom what it is. So we get to decide that. I know that doesn't feel in the midst of it. I remember when I was in the midst of my pain and suffering, and my misting in the middle of my just making decisions and not yet living in my purpose, not understanding fear, excuse me. It didn't feel like I had a choice. Right? It didn't feel like I had a choice. So it may not feel like a choice to you either, but it is your choice. And I think just owning that in the beginning, like, wait, it's my choice. And again, it doesn't feel like it. I get it. It doesn't feel like it. But once you are willing to say, oh, this is my choice, then you can have more discernment, right? And do what Monsef said, like, be honest with yourself. But again, I really want to preface this. When I was in my most difficult times, I didn't think I was lying to myself, right? I didn't think I was lying to myself because I was so caught up, right? Caught up in my story, right? Caught up in the things I'd been trained, caught up in my past. Like I couldn't break through the illusion, right? Because we have to break through the illusion. We have to cut through the illusion. So that is the first order of business, not to say like, again, if you know you're lying to yourself, hallelujah, awesome. But if you really think you're not, but your life isn't working out, you might want to practice like, okay, where am I fooling myself? Well, I want to ask you that question. Where am I, am I making this up or is it a fact? That's my favorite question. Am I making this up or is it a fact? Because 90% of the time, 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, I'm making it up. So to be willing to actually decide that you want to take your life back and that you want to live in purpose and that you want to unfold your destiny, that you want to live the life your soul intended, is actually the first step for having the cascade of things that have been holding you back to collapse. But again, you have to make that decision and you have to be committed to that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, as you mentioned, taking decisions, many times also we have, like the cause can be different things, but sometimes can be the fear of missing out or the fear of taking the wrong decision. And then what happens is that making the decision becomes very hard and we feel like stuck. So how do you deal with this?
Well, that's beautiful that you said that. I'm so grateful. So again, remember, whenever we're stuck, we may or may not be willing to tell ourselves the truth. So let's just admit, right? Let's admit as a group, let's admit as individuals that there are things hidden from our sight, right? We can all agree to that, right? We can all agree that there are things that we cannot see, that we are not aware of, that we have not been wanting to see, right? So my parents died, and I can share that story in a second. My parents, well, I'll share it now, I guess. When I was 14 years old, it was Father's Day. My father and mother were separated, and my father was coming out to take us to Sunday brunch. And it was a big deal because Sunday brunch in my little family, in my little town, in my little family, we didn't do that. 3 kids, 2 adults, 5 people. That's a lot of money. And so today, because my parents were separated, my father's coming out to take us to Father's Day brunch. So my mother made me a brand new dress. I'm in my mother's room. She's putting on her blue eyeshadow, putting on her rose-colored lipstick, puffing up her hair, beehive hairdo. My father walks in, come on. And my 2 sisters are fighting it out in our one bathroom. And me and my mother start walking towards the door, grab our coats. It has just started to sprinkle. And my dad yells one more time, come on, because my sisters are still stuck in the bathroom. And as we walk out, my father says, I have to go get my coat from the car. So his coat is his tan Naugahyde leisure suit coat. And so as me and my mother and my father walk out, my father goes to his trunk, opens it up, grabs the coat, but I noticed he didn't grab a coat. He grabs a gun and he starts yelling at my mother. You made me do this. You made me do this. And he fires. And I am screaming, Dad, what are you doing? Dad, stop. And he cocks the gun again and he points it at me. And I absolutely 100% believe I was next. And he blinks and I blink. He blinks and I blink. And my mother, with her literal last breath, screams, no, don't. And my father, realizing my mother is still alive, takes that bullet intended for me and shoots my mother a second time. That second bullet goes through my mother's abdomen, out her back, and lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I heard was, And then my father cocks the gun one more time, puts the gun to his head and fires. Now I'm 14 years old and that is my fault, right? In my mind and heart, it was my fault. I was planning to be a minister before this. I just told my parents that I was going to be a minister. And now I didn't jump in front of the gun. I didn't grab the gun, right? I didn't say anything, right? I didn't stop my father. And I was the only one that could have. I didn't say anything magical. I didn't trip him. I didn't even jump in front of my mother. And I remember the thought running through my head, God will not give you anything that you cannot, handle. And I remember thinking to myself, well, this is a really big lesson and this sucks. So I run into my mother's room, get on my knees and pray and say, please, God, if you keep her alive, I will be a minister. And if you do not, all bets are off. So she died. My father died. And for the next 20 years, I had so much guilt and shame, and I had so much evidence. And this is what I want you to hear. I had so much evidence that it was my fault, right? I was the only one out there. I didn't do anything. I didn't, like I said, grab the gun, kick my father, jump in front of my mother. I didn't do anything. And it didn't matter how much I attempted to support myself for the next 20 years. That painful moment in my life, that guilt and shame, that I just kept me victimized, right? Kept me victimized in my own spiral because, again, I had proof that was true. So no matter where I went, I mean, I knew logically that I was 14, and I knew logically at 14, you may not be the best person to stop a murder-suicide, but it didn't matter, right? Because your visceral experience, every cell in my being was blaming myself. So when I was attempting to change my life, on my way of those 20 years, I became an alcoholic. I tried to kill myself 3 times. I had 3 DUIs. And it was that third suicide attempt when I realized something. I realized I wasn't good at killing myself, that's for sure. And I needed another way. And so what I said to myself is, okay, well, I have to start at the beginning. I have to start over. And I got a calendar because I thought, what do you do in kindergarten? I got a calendar and I got gold stars. And I started putting on gold stars every time I did something good. Anytime I did something nice. Anytime I did something, make awake, right? Conscious. And because I had to discover if there was anything good in me to keep alive, because I'm alive. So I better figure it out because I'm not dying. And after 30 days, the calendar was filled with gold stars. And I was shocked. And I'm talking about little gold stars, like I got mad, but I didn't break anything, right? That's the level we're talking about, right? That I felt somebody hurt me, but I didn't lash out, right? Like this is the level of awareness I was at and skill I was at. But there was hope because I had 30 days of gold stars. It was packed. So that was one way that I started to decide that there was more of me to save and more of me to express than I had been living, that I had been covered by, that I had been crutched by, that I had been, haunted by. And, I went on to forgive my father and then my mother and then myself. By the way, my father was the easiest to forgive. And so when we're lying to ourselves, when our life does not match our choice, right? When our life does not match, we know that when we know there's a mismatch, like something's not happening and we know there's something wrong, we just can't put our finger on it. We've got to go back down to the basics and actually admit to ourselves, like Mom Steph said, where am I lying to myself? And again, you may not be able to identify. So ask yourself, what am I making up versus what is true? Where is it easier to trick myself? What is the thing I don't want to be true about myself? What is the things that people have told me that I've brushed off in the past? Like starting to do an inventory about the way you think, right? The way you think, the way you process, because it's our processing that actually gets in our way because of how we process. We have something happen and then we go automatically make up a story to make ourselves either the victim or the victor, instead of being able to go through the middle way and really see what is the next best choice for us. So yes, it is about being honest. It's also about having great compassion. Because I know my honesty before was filled with, tough love. And what I really needed was compassion and a soft place to land and see my own innocence. So it's one of the things that one of our top values, actually is our top value at Fearless Living, is compassion and seeing your innocence. Because once you can do that, it does break through the illusion. It does cut through the stories. It does stop you from repeating over and over again the lies of your past and the lies in your brain.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your story, because many times we are in some situations we think that there is no way out, but when we hear stories like yours, it really gives us so much hope that we can always start over, and there's always opportunities for us, because even though these are like really challenging experiences, it's like they are catalysts for some really powerful gifts within that can be shared. And we've seen like the huge impact you are having on so many people around the world. So
yes, but it took me 20 years to realize that, right? So most of us, we're in the middle of our pain and suffering when we tell ourselves terrible stories about ourselves. We may have an inkling, or we may have been told from a spiritual advisor or through our own spiritual awakening. We know that we know that it's meant for good, right? We know it's meant to teach us. We know it's meant to make us better people, right? We know logically, but man, viscerally, right? Viscerally in our bones and in our cells, it is hard to transcend that because it's so ingrained. And this is where we get to use our frontal lobe and start having that discernment. But, so just again, that's where compassion comes in, right? Compassion comes in when you're hanging on for dear life to a story because it feels real, because it was real, right? To a certain extent, it did happen. So, give yourself, don't pretend that things didn't happen. They happened. I think that's one way that spirituality goes wrong is, it's like, let's not pretend that happened. No, it happened. Because when we can admit it happens, we then can give ourselves the gift of compassion, seeing our innocence. When we pretend it doesn't happen, we're actually not soothing ourselves. We're actually not taking care of the human being that we are. So yes, admit it happened. Admit all the terrible things that happened to you. Admit it. Say them out loud. Write them on a piece of paper. Tell your therapist. Tell your coach. Admit them. And then right next to it, in this moment, at my age right now and where I am right now, if I had compassion for myself in this moment and I saw my innocence, how would that story change? How would that story change? And giving yourself that compassion and seeing your innocence will literally transform that story. And then you will be able to use what you've gone through. And you'll be able to pick and choose. You'll be able to discern. You'll be able to understand what it is about that story, that the pain that you've gone through, that is really the catalyst for your evolution, for your awakening, for supporting others, for changing the world, right? If there's only one of us here and you fall into the arms of compassion, you've just changed the world. So if there's only one of us here, how you're operating in the world matters greatly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And also from my opinion, like part of being compassionate with ourselves is to allow time for us to heal, because it's a process and we don't need to push ourselves to create like a change that happens in an instant or very, very quickly.
That's right. I mean, again, compassion, compassion isn't just a one-time event. Forgiveness isn't a one-time event. It is, it is the rest of your life. People come to me and they go, well, I thought I forgave. It's like, oh my God, I forgave my father the day it happened. I was going to be a minister. So I immediately forgave him. And then, I've probably forgiven my father at different intervals in my life, maybe 10, 20 times, because something like when I'm going through, like when I went through, when I was getting married, I had to forgive my father again because I missed my mother. And I wanted, like a woman shouldn't be getting married without her mother. Right. And then when I got divorced, I had to forgive again. Right. And, so I could go on and on about all the times that I had to forgive. And I like to say that forgiveness is available to us only at the state of our consciousness. So first time I forgave my father and mother and myself, I was this conscious, let's just say, right? And then as my consciousness grew, it bumped up against the limitations that I hadn't yet been aware of to forgive. And so then now it's another opportunity to forgive. And then I grow again in consciousness and evolve and become more aware and awake. And there's places to forgive again. Instead, most people say, well, I forgave. What's my problem? I must not have done it. It's like, no, you forgave up to the level of your awareness and consciousness, and then you'll forgive again. And this is the cool thing. It becomes easy. It just becomes easy because you know it's just part of the process of opening your heart to love, right? And we all know that there's only two feelings when it gets down to it, love or fear. So, the more you understand and work with your fear, the more you'll actually be in the land of love.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, from my understanding, it's not about forcing forgiveness. It comes from the moments as we evolve, as we connect more to our truth, and then forgiveness becomes more easier with
Yeah, and we might have to make a decision, right? So,
Yeah.
so sometimes, we know, so many of us, right? We've done the work, we've read the books, we know what we're supposed to do. We know it. We just don't do it. Because why? Because that gosh darn fear, what I call the wheel of fear and the wheel of freedom. And that wheel of fear just keeps kind of blocking you. And so, you got to forgive her. You got to do A, B, or C. You know it. But you can't get over the fence, right? You can't get over the hump. You can't cross the pond, right? You can't do it. It feels like you're stuck, right? And in that moment is when more compassion is needed, right? Like become softer with yourself instead of harder with yourself. And I don't want to say push, force, etc., but admit to yourself that this work must be done and sit down with a piece of paper and start doing it. And you might walk away from that piece of paper 10 times, but keep coming back to it. That's the devotion, right? The devotion is coming back to the piece of paper, not doing the exercise perfectly. It's about coming back to the piece of paper, no matter how many times. And so, you write it down and you go, I'm willing to forgive. And then you're like, no, I'm not. And you walk away and go get something to drink, right? And then, an hour later, you take your walk and you're like, okay, I'm going to try again, right? It's this devotion to your own healing, to transcending your own suffering, to transcending your old stories. That really is where the magic happens. It's your commitment that kind of opens you up to the, to the glory, opens you up to the ethers, opens you up to the, to the stars, opens your heart up, opens your mind up. So it may not be easy to do, but it's your devotion and your commitment to do it from a place of gentleness and compassion and innocence that allows you to quickly and more effortlessly move through it so that you can now transcend it. And you can use the fodder of it to save yourself and save others and help others and move others and support others and love others and yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I lost the internet connection for a while. So maybe I will not comment about what you said because I didn't hear it. But another question that I had is the fear of not being able to be the creator of our life. Like it can be either limiting belief systems or others. If in our childhood others took decisions for us and not ourselves. And then at some point we have this fear coming. We are afraid we will not be able to make our own decisions. So what is your opinion about that?
Well, a couple things you said. So let's talk about the fear of, living the life our soul intended, because that's what I call it, right? Living the life your soul intended and to create the life you want. Well, there's two things going on, and it's actually a little bit more complicated. I'm going to make it a little simpler than it actually is in reality. But a lot of people, myself included, when I first began this journey, I wanted to create, right? I wanted this to happen, and I wanted to make this happen, and I wanted to make this happen. So I would do my affirmations and I would repeat over and over again. And then some would happen and some wouldn't. And I then was on a quest to figure out why one works and why doesn't, why isn't it always working? And then I remembered that, it's where you're creating from, first of all, and who are you surrendering to? So are you creating from what I call the wheel of fear, your ego, again, whatever you name that thing, that smaller part of yourself, because you think if I can create this, this will solve my problem. So you're still creating from the place of problem, right? That's how most people are trying to decide and create their life. They're like, I have to solve a problem, and therefore I have the solution. And therefore I'm now going to do the things everybody says in order to make that happen. Well, that's all driven from what I call the wheel of fear and all from ego. It is actually not from source, actually not from the divine, actually not from your soul. It's all, you're all spinning, we're all spinning in trying to make something happen because we think that is what's going to solve our problem. And that is a recipe for haphazard creation, but also it's not actually what really in our hearts we want, even though it's the way we learn. What we want to do, and what I invite you to do, is create from that place that's bigger than you. Again, you can call it God, you can call it source, you can call your intuition, you can call it the field, you can call it the divine, right? You can call it whatever you name it. But if you create from that power, from that sense of destiny, from that place, then that's a whole different ballgame, because you're not deciding with your mind what to do. You're actually being guided, told, pushed, nudged what to do. And if you're committed, and if your values are, I want to live the life of source, I want to live the life my soul intended, I want to live larger, I want to experience the divine, then just that journey alone of you being willing to listen to those nudges, those inklings, will be an accelerated growth path. And in your devotion to that, you will be forced and or choose to learn the skills you need in order to fulfill it, because we all need more skills and we all need more tools. Most of us didn't come on this planet fully equipped. So, I always say that my Fearless Living Institute is actually my spiritual practice, right? It's my spiritual journey. Everybody's business is, everybody's journey is, whether you know it or not, admit it or not. So, ask yourself, first of all, where are you creating from? Are you creating from your mind and trying to solve the problem yourself, and from your small mind, and think, oh, if I do this will solve a problem? Or are you courting that thing that's larger than us? Are you courting the divine? And are you listening and actually moving in the flow of what that divine is sharing, so that you can, on one hand, have an easier, graceful, more, it's more ease, more grace. Yet that ease and grace, that source is going to ask you to learn things, is going to ask you to dump off the deep end, is going to ask you, because you need that skill and tool to do it. I always laugh because, God put in my heart that I wanted to be an actress ever since I was little. And of course I didn't know how to be an actress. I grew up in a little town. I mean, how nobody, I don't know how to be an actress, right? I never met an actress. So I go finally to college in University of Minnesota, Minneapolis, and I'm advertising for a roommate, and my roommate that comes in is an actress from LA. And of course, I had her moving right away. And I was like, this is my chance. I actually know an actress from Los Angeles, and I'm going to do it now, right? So she says to me, she's going to live here 1 year and move back. So then I'm like, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. Okay. So I did move to Los Angeles. It took me 2 years to actually go to my first acting class. And then I started acting and I started getting work, et cetera. But as I became an actress and more successful, I actually realized I didn't like it. And when I had that realization, it was like ripping my heart out, because that's the only thing I'd ever thought of. And who am I if I'm not that? And it was such a long journey to get here. So after much work and much awakening and much realization, I decided to leave acting. And for 2 years, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. Who am I, et cetera. And then, it's a whole other story about how I became a life coach. But then, 5 years of being a coach, having a book out, I'm in England and they're hiring for the first reality show of its kind with a life coach. And they're like, would you audition, please? And I'm like, yeah. Well, I can see so clearly that all that acting, all that training was nothing to do with me being on the stage. It had everything to do with being prepared for that moment so that I could change lives on television, right? So that I could get on a stage and change lives. So, sometimes we think like, oh my God, this dream died. Well, it's like, no, the seeds of that dream are still in you. And that seed, the skills you learned and the tools you learned, because you're going to need them. You are going to need them, which is another exercise you could do to prepare, is just start creating an inventory of all your skills and tools. just not labels of jobs, but really skills and tools. Like, what are your skills? What are your tools? What's your toolbox? What's your skills? So that you can actually start owning that you have those things. And so then when you start moving in areas that are, that you realize you need a new skill and tool, you can go get it, right? So, so I say all that because you already have so many skills and tools, but we don't give ourselves credit for it because maybe we're not using them in the way we thought, or maybe we quit something like I did, or maybe it just hasn't worked out. And so we don't know the goodness and greatness that we have within us. We don't know all the skills and tools. And so they're kind of getting rusty because we're not using them. So I invite you to keep track of those skills and tools and start admitting to yourself when you say, oh my God, I can't do that. Yes, you can do it. You just don't have the skill and tool. If you can start seeing anything you want to the creation, going back to creation, anything that source, God, divine, again, the field, intuition, whatever you want to name it, whatever that thing is calling forth within you, you have a skill and tool that'll move you forward. And can you be open, humble, awake enough to recognize, I don't know how to do this. And that's not a bad thing. That's I got to learn how thing. And so then you go and do it because you know you're doing it for the express purpose of fulfilling your soul's destiny, right? You're not doing it because, oh, I just want to do this. No, you're actually needing the skill in order to live your soul's destiny. And again, you may not know the whole picture, but you know you need it for the next step. So when you think of it that way, it doesn't get as scary to learn a skill or tool, right? It doesn't get as scary to admit you have some fear because it is what's always going to happen. I have an exercise called stretch, risk, and die. And as you move from your comfort zone to your stretch, risk, and die, every circle, is a ring of fear. And when you logically know that, it's a lot easier to actually take the steps and transcend that and move forward. So going back to the question, you asked is, wait a minute. So where am I creating from? Am I creating from my small mind that I want to solve a problem and I'm going to figure out how to solve that problem myself? Or am I being led by something greater that is actually guiding me? And am I trusting, which again is not easy to do, trusting myself, trusting that this is my next step, trusting, and then learning the skills and tools and emotional maturity and, enlightenment, evolution, again, whatever you want to call it from a spiritual perspective, that I need in order to keep on my path of my destiny. So it really comes down, I see people so frustrated with creating, and usually those are the ones that are trying to create from their mind.
Yeah, exactly. That was really inspiring. Thank you so much. And also it brings so much clarity about the importance of following our hearts, because many times we don't know why we feel drawn to do something or learn something, but we will see the bigger picture as we move forward in our path.
That's right.
Yeah. And also thank you for the practice you shared. And so everyone, if you have any question to ask Rhonda, you can either type it on the chat box or raise your hand. And also she is offering us a free gift. It's called Stretch, Risk, or Die. And I put the link on the chat box. There's also the link on the live events page. It's a button, free gift button. And it will be also on the replay page. So Rhonda, I would love if you can tell us more about this gift.
Oh, I would love to. Stretch, Risk, and Die is one of my most popular tools. And it's actually going to start giving you some clarity about why you get or feel stuck, right? Because it's 3 15-minute videos, very short. I'm talking to a group. So it's a live event that I broke down into, a team broke down into 3 videos. And so you're just going to, as you watch the videos, then there's a whole workbook too, there's a whole guidebook, and there's examples. So you'll know how to do it, tons of support material. So you're not going to be lost, right? But bottom line is, as we want to move forward in the life our soul intended, if we want to move forward towards our destiny, if we really want the divine to spark our life, then we must know and have the courage and be the willingness to actually move forward. And so comfort zone is where you are now, whatever that looks like. The stretch zone is things that you can do, you just don't do, which by the way is the beat up zone as well, because the stretch zone, even though it's a stretch only and we're not doing it, it's where we're most ruthless with ourselves. Then it's the risk zone, things you don't know if you could succeed. You're not sure. Like the stretch, you know you could succeed, you just don't do it. Risk is, I don't know if I'll succeed. And then the die zone is like, oh my God, I'd rather die doing that, right? And when you watch the 3 50-minute videos, what you're going to learn about is how to master the stretch, risk, and die zones. But more importantly, what happens when you start practicing those stretch, risk, and die zones? Because what happens then is your comfort zone takes over your stretch zone. And now you have this big comfort, right? And what was your risk zone is not your stretch zone, and your die zone is not your risk zone. So your comfort zone becomes larger and larger, because bottom line is we want to be comfortable in our skin, do we not? We want to be comfortable, right? We want to be comfortable, be who we are, comfortable in our skin. So you want the largest comfort zone possible, not a small one, right? So, but you're going to keep learning tools and skills and have awarenesses. So that stretch now is in your comfort. That risk becomes in your comfort. That die actually will soon become in your comfort zone. And you'll have a whole new stretch, risk, or die zone. And once you start seeing your life through these eyes, it's a lot easier to stop beating yourself up. It's a lot easier to stop blaming yourself. It's a lot easier to quit saying you're stuck, right? We say we're stuck when we're unclear. That's all. So we're just unclear. So use the stretch, risk, and die zone to get clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Clarity can really create really huge shifts. And sometimes it can be really fast when we have that clarity about what's going on. So thank you so much, Rhonda.
And it will also stop you procrastinating. Like if you're a procrastinator, it'll stop it right away. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, Rhonda, for the gifts. And again, everyone, the link is in the chat box, both on YouTube and Zoom. And there is also a free gifts button on the live event page and later on the replay page as well. And yes, so we have Karen. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hi, Miss Karen.
Hi.
Wonderful series that I've really enjoyed this, and you're very kind, Melissa. So I really have enjoyed the speakers I've listened to. Rhonda, you're fantastic. Thank you for sharing your story. That was amazing, and how you have created your life since then. But my question is, I had something happen, and it's always, like you said, in your head, right? And whatever stories or hallucinations or illusions that you're trying to tell yourself, and you can tell a different story, right, to get yourself out of it. I don't. It's like I could, but I just want to punish these people, Yes. And so how do I get myself out of that funk? Because right now it's like, I just kind of.
I totally get it. So first of all, that's a natural response. So first of all, just know your job right now is just to be kind to yourself about your rage and anger, and actually write down or burn, burn, go kick some stones, go to the river and write down everything you're pissed about and throw it in the river, write letter after letter after letter and burn it, right? Like you have a right to your rage. We just don't want to act out, right? We don't want to act it out on other people. We just want to be responsible. Like, I feel rage. Okay, well then honor yourself. Go and, take a bat and hit your bed, right? Go write on some rocks and throw it in the river, write a letter and burn it up. And, allow yourself that permission. I'm also going to give you another exercise to help start shifting your brain. Okay. Because what's happening is you're in one place, right? I'm in the rage place. Logically, you want to be in the forgiveness, let go place. You know that's the place to be, but you just can't cross over because the people haven't paid, right? They haven't said they're sorry. They haven't made amends. And it's like, you want that, and we know that, of course you want that. So first of all, of course you want that. I want that, right? I want that in my life. We all want that. So just admitting what you want is not bad or wrong. It's what we all human beings want. We want to be honored and identified and seen and heard and appreciated. We want people to take responsibility. We want the world to be fair. So just allow yourself, like, that's just human. That's just human, right? So, and also that you want to cross over and get to the other side. So I am going to give you a quick exercise that you can do. I'm thinking of two, so let me just think about which one I want to do. I'm going to give you this one, and then let me see if I'm called to do the other one. So this exercise, sorry, I'm just listening just a second. Okay, I know which one to do. Okay, so I'm going to give you the forgiving the impossible exercise. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of paper and you're going to put a line down the middle. Okay, line down the middle. On the left-hand side, you're going to write down the people, the person, the organization, whatever happened, right? The person, if it's a specific person or specific people, write that down. Okay. On the right-hand side, you're going to write, I'm willing to forgive you. Now, let me show you how this is done. This is how I actually forgave my father, because I, like you, I don't think it's wrong to say that, you would want your mother's life to be avenged, right? Like we all can see that, right? Like, of course I want my father. And then he killed himself. It's like, right? Like, I want him to be alive so I can punish him, right? So this is how I eventually forgave my father. On the left-hand side, again, you put the name. So I put my dad, right? You're going to put the people. On the right, I wrote, I'm willing to forgive you. Now, this is the exercise. Listen very carefully. I'm going to show you how to do it. So I wrote my dad. I think of my dad, right? When I was in that place of unforgiveness. And what's one sentence that comes through me? How could you do this to me? Right? That's the first sentence. How could you do this to me? Then I go to the next column. I'm willing to forgive you. Go over to the next column. No, I'm not. Right-hand column. I'm willing to forgive you one day. Well, you'd have to really apologize or clean up your stuff. Look where you left me. I'm willing to forgive you, or I'm willing to one day forgive you, whatever's true, right? And then you go back and forth. And it's really, Karen, about one sentence at a time. And what it's doing, it's actually training your brain to live in the paradox, right? We have to, excuse me, I'm having something in my throat. And of course, I forgot my water today. We want to train our brain to be able to live in the paradox of our anger and the desire to forgive. Because once we can live in that dual world, we'll flip. Okay. So you're going to write one sentence and then I'm willing to forgive you. And again, you can write, I'm willing to forgive you one day, or I'm willing to forgive you maybe in the future, but I don't know when that's going to be. I'll have to be dead. Right. But you're just admitting that there is a tiny part of you that is willing. And then you do it one sentence under the person, then go back and forth, one sentence at a time, Karen. That's really, really important, because that's where you're shifting your neural pathways. That's where you're shifting the way your brain thinks. Okay. So you have to do one sentence at a time. You're going to do this for 5 pages, 10 pages, 8 pages, 4 pages. And you might do it again the next day, right? You might do it 10 times, 3 times. So eventually that's going to start softening you. It's going to start showing you how you're trapping yourself. It's going to start showing the powerlessness and your power. Okay. So are you willing to do that exercise, Karen?
Oh, that's a beautiful exercise. And you answered my question, because I was like, why could she forget her father faster than her mother?
Because he was the victim, right? Not the victim. He was the perpetrator. Like, it was clear he took a gun, right? So I had something to forgive him for, right? Oh, gun, father, right? Killed, murdered, right? My mother, I had put her, as we do for innocent victims, we put them on pedestals, right? And I put her on a pedestal. I was like, oh, mother, this happened to you. And again, not that wasn't true, right? My mother didn't cause her death, right? But I did have to look at her as a woman instead of on a pedestal, and actually go, Mom, you stayed with Dad, right? And you knew, my father tried to kill me when I was 12. You stayed with Dad after he tried to kill me, right? Like, and you did nothing about it, right? Like, so I had to look at my mother, take her off the innocent victim pedestal, and just look at her as a woman, look at her as a human being, as, of course, she was afraid to get divorced. Her father was telling her, how dare nobody gets divorced in this family. Of course, all that was real and true. And I know what that feels like. So then I can have deep compassion for my mother, but also know that she was so scared. And I can forgive that, right? She didn't protect me, right? She didn't protect me. So many parents don't protect their children from the abuser, right? So, but I could see that she didn't know how. her father was telling her, like, don't you dare leave your husband, right? I mean, church, just everything. So I had to take my mom off the pedestal, look at her and go, okay. And then I was actually the hardest to forgive because, right, like I'm the one that was there and I should have done something heroic, right? And I didn't. So that shame, that humiliation, that burden of responsibility. And again, logically, we all know I was 14 years old. Like we logically can say that. But when it's happening to you, it's, you watch enough movies, you're supposed to jump in front of the gun, right? Right. You're supposed to kick the bad guy, right? But I'm like, right, that. So this is the exercise I invite you to do, Miss Karen. Are you willing to do it?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rhonda. That's amazing.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rhonda. And also thank you, Karen. So we still have some time. Mikalia, can you please unmute yourself? Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you. This wonderful show, Monsef and Ron. I really look forward to connecting with your talk because it sounds perfect. I'm in a different situation. I am being guided very strongly, and it's a very heart-led to my soul's purpose, which is not something I ever considered.
Yes, that's how it usually happens, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I've been in a wheelchair for a while, so I've been on government benefits and always taken care of. So all these wonderful synchronicities and things are coming forward and happening for me. And when I'm in my heart and when I'm following my soul, it's like everything's really beautiful.
Yes.
But then my head comes in and says, how are you going to put a roof over your head and food on the table? Because you haven't done that for so long. How are you going to start doing that again?
No, that's none of your business. Okay. So that's none of your business. So I'm going to give you an exercise. Are you willing to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, this was the exercise that I was getting, and I must have been getting it for you because it's the other exercise I was wanting to give to Karen. So now I'm going to give it to you. So you both get both exercises. So I give you. So that's, first of all, that's natural and normal, right? We're human beings. So again, going back to the theme today, gentle compassion, right? Be gentle with yourself. So I'm going to give you an exercise. It's called, and are you willing to do it, first of all? Because I'm not going to give it to you if you're not willing.
Yes.
Okay, good. So you're going to also take a piece of paper and you're also going to put a line down the middle. And on the left side, you're going to write the word control. And on the right side, you're going to write no control. And under the control, you're going to write down all the things you have control over regarding this thing that's moving through you, right? You have control over whether you study it or not. You have control over whether you get prepared, right? So you have control probably over many, many things regarding this nudge that's moving through your heart and that you feel compelled to move forward in. There are things you control, okay? So you're going to write down all the things you control. Then under the no control, you're going to write all the things you don't control. Right? You don't know where the clients are going to come from, or you don't know how you're going to, rent, right? Like all the things you don't think you have control over, you're going to put in the no control category. Now, let's go back to the control category. In the control category, you're actually going to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how well you're doing in the control category. Like, oh, I'm in charge of making some telephone calls, right? I'm in control to make these calls. Let's just make that. Well, are you making the calls? Right? Are you asking the questions? Are you doing, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you doing that thing you can control? And what I know to be true is that I see this over and over again, that when we feel out of control, when we're not sure, like, how am I going to pay my rent? We actually don't do the things we can control because we kind of focus on the things we can't control. We're staring at that list, right? I can't control this. Where's the thing, right? But that's not where your power lies. And that's not what you're meant to focus on. You're meant to focus on the things you can control, right? And then if you're a God girl, divine girl, whatever you want to call it, when the thing says no control, you can actually cross that off and say, God, that's up to you, God. Okay, that's yours. It's none of my business. So your job is to do the things you can control and keep adding to the list and put 1 to 10 next to them so that you actually you'll feel more empowered. You'll feel more centered. You'll feel like you're in the workings of your destiny, that you're actually actively engaging in it, right? And that alone will start opening doors that you don't even know exist right now. So the answers to the questions that are down the road don't get answered before we take our first step, right? They get answered on mile 20. And we're going, well, mile 20, you got to give me the answer before I take the first step. And that's not how God works. That's not how divine works. That's not how our open heart works. So your job is control and no control. Focus on the things you can control. That will actually improve you feel more empowered. Like I said, you will feel more in line. It will give you more courage, and you'll find more connections. Like things will start unfolding more easily. And then maybe some of the things you can control, you'll be like, wait a minute, I can control them now. You'll maybe move them over. And you'll move things more, you'll add more things to your control list and more things to your out of control list. But keep your head and heart and your actions in the control category. That will open up the avenues that the no control starts taking care of itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are you willing to do that?
Yes.
Excellent. And what do you think could happen if you did that?
Well, it's just like this wonderful timeline coming forward, and
Yes.
it's kind of like, because I can see it in the future. It's built for success because it is heart aligned, it is soul aligned. It's just kind of like my head's a bit.
Yes. So are you willing to take the steps necessary under your control category in order to say yes to that thing that's moving through you? Because when we take action under the control category, we're also signaling to God, source, divine, universe, right? We're signaling like, I'm on board. I'm happening. I'm doing it, right? Because if we're not doing the things we can't control and we're just going, well, God, tell me again, or I want to know. No. Okay. He's like going, are you kidding me? I told you. Now you got to have some faith and trust and start taking action. So focus on your control. And I know that next time I see you, next time I talk to you, things will start shifting. And make sure you go get Stretchers Can Die, because that's also going to be significantly helpful to decide how to do the things in the control and no control categories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mikaela. And thank you so much, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Rhonda, really very grateful to you for all the support, the inspiration you gave us today, and the time you spent with us. So I'm so grateful to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was fun. Thank you so much, everyone. And please remember, be fearless. You have a right. You have a right to be fearless. Nothing wrong with you.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. And also everyone, thank you so much for joining us today, whether live or later on the replay. And again, I highly recommend that you get the free gifts that Rhonda is offering to us. And I will put again the link on the chat box, and you will find it also on the live events page and the replay page, and also on YouTube in the replay description. And yeah, so with that, everyone, I'm sending you so much love, and I will see you on the next call.